So getting started, the standard form of an equation of a line is ax plus by is equal to c. And we have the requirement that a, b, and c are real numbers, and both a and b are not allowed to be 0. A can be 0 if b is not 0, b can be 0 if a is not 0, but they can't both be 0 at the same time, or else we wouldn't have a line. So let's look at example 1. We want to graph this equation and identify the x and y intercepts. This line is in standard form. We can see a is 3, b is -2, and c is 6. So in order to graph this line, I'm going to just go ahead and find the intercepts. So take a second. Think back to a previous lesson in this course. Lesson 2 is where we learned how to find intercepts. I'm going to start off by finding the x-intercept of this line. How do we find the x-intercept? We find the x-intercept by setting y equal to 0. So when I set y equal to 0, our equation becomes 3x minus 2 times 0 is equal to 6. 2 times 0 is just 0, so we simply have 3x is equal to 6. I'll divide both sides by 3 to see that my x value is 2. So I know that the x-intercept of this line is the point 2, 0. Now I'm going to go in and find the y-intercept. You know what, I'm just going to jot this down here. So notice that we solved that equation and we got x is equal to 2, but we know that intercepts are points. So for instance, I'm going to go ahead and plot the point 2, 0. Went right to, didn't go up or down. To find the y-intercept, I'm going to be setting x equal to 0. So now my equation is 3 times 0 minus 2y is equal to 6. 3 times 0 is just 0. So we have a -2y is equal to 6. We're solving for y, so we're going to divide both sides of this equation by -2 to get that y is equal to -3. So our y-intercept is the point 0, -3. And that point is down here. So I have found both the intercepts of the line. When you're graphing a line, you really only need 2 points, because once you have 2 points that are on the line, you can simply connect those 2 points and extend off in both directions. That looks kind of crooked. So make sure that you have arrows on both endpoints of your line, because lines never end. They go on forever in both directions, okay? So that's an easy way for us to graph a line. If it's given to us in standard form, we can just set x equal to 0, find the y-intercept, set y equal to 0, find the x-intercept, plot those intercepts, and then connect those points and extend. So moving on to our next example, we have the equation 5x is equal to -10. Let's start off finding our intercepts. We find the x-intercept by setting y equal to 0 and solving for x. I'm just going to jot that down here. It's a little bit more nuanced this time, and solve for x. Well, when we look at the equation 5x is equal to -10, there is no y to set equal to 0. Right? So I don't have to do that. There is no y for me to set equal to 0. So let's take it a step further and go ahead and solve for x. So if I'm going to now solve for x, I would divide both sides of this equation by 5, and I will get that x is equal to -2. So our x-intercept is the point -2, 0, because we always know that the y-coordinate is 0 for an x-intercept. So here is our x-intercept. Let's go on and talk about finding the y-intercept. If I was finding the y-intercept, I would set x equal to 0 and solve for y. So let's see what happens if I set x equal to 0. If I set x equal to 0, I'm going to end up with 5 times 0 is equal to -10, which is the same as saying that 0 is equal to -10, which we know is not true. So please don't leave that on your paper. Go in and put like slash marks. I'm very particular about notation, so don't write things on your paper that are not true. 0 is not -10, so because when we plugged in 0 for x, we got a statement that was not true, that tells us that this function has no y-intercept. There is no condition on y. Y does not show up in the equation. All the equation says is that x has to be -2. So it doesn't matter if y is 3, 4, 5, -4, it doesn't matter what y is as long as x is -2. So this line is a vertical line that goes through -2 on the x-axis. Any line that just looks like x equals a number with no y showing up in that equation is going to be a vertical line that hits the x-axis at whatever that number is. Here we have example 3. Let's go through the motions again. Finding the x-intercept, we would set y equal to 0. So I'm going to just go ahead and set y equal to 0. I get something that is not true. I replaced this y with 0 in the equation. 0 is not equal to 2. So this equation has no x-intercept. If you ever plug something in trying to find an intercept and you're getting something that is not true, it means you do not have that intercept. To find the y-intercept, I would set x equal to 0 and solve for y. Well, there is no x to set equal to 0, and the equation is already solved for y. So the y-intercept would be the point 0, 2. When x is 0, y is 2. When x is anything, whether it's -1, +4, -3, y is always going to be 2. So this equation is a horizontal line that goes through 2 on the y-axis. So what we see in examples 2 and 3 is that when we have an equation that is simply x equal a number, that is a vertical line. When we have an equation that is simply y equals a number, that is a horizontal line.